Hey, welcome to the Peak Health Revolution. My name is Logan Grundy. I'm a health coach, and today we're going to be focusing on the importance of breath work. And the most important piece in there, in my mind, is the level of CO2 in our body comparative to oxygen. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think a lot of the times we're talking about like bigger and bigger breaths, lower and lower into your abdomen. And to a degree, there's a lot of validity and importance to that piece, but I think people are misunderstanding the relationship between oxygen and CO2 in our body and how those two play off on one another. So that's all I want to explain to you in this video is why we don't want to overdo the oxygen side and underdo and not pay attention to the CO2 side. So, a couple important things for us to know is that CO2 is actually the piece in our body that tells us to breathe. It's those rising CO2 levels that are going to tell the brain, hey, we need to take a breath. The CO2 sensors are going off essentially, versus, hey, my oxygen levels are getting so low, I need you to take another breath. Those would come in much after the part where your body's saying, hey, I need to take a breath because I need to blow off this CO2. So that's an important piece to understand is that it's CO2 that's causing us to take our breaths in and out. And the next piece that we really need to understand is that the body has a ton of oxygen in it. When you put on a little pulse oximeter, so this is something that you would get in like a hospital or maybe by an ambulance or something if you had something happen, right? Is this a little clip that goes in your finger and it tells you what the oxygenation level in your blood is essentially. So when we look at that, it tells us that our body is there lots of oxygen in our blood. And a normal person, just day to day, like I'm sitting right now, and like you are sitting right now, is going to be running usually somewhere between like 97 to 99%, maybe 96 on the lower end there. So up above 95% for just about everyone, unless you have some kind of issue going on. So we know that there's actually a ton of oxygen in the body and in the system. So that's not an issue for us. So when we're thinking about breath work, we don't always need to be thinking about bigger and bigger breaths and more oxygen in. What we need to think about is the relationship between oxygen and CO2. Because when the CO2 levels rise in our body, it actually tells our body that it can release more of that oxygen that's in the blood to the body, to the muscles for use. So think about it as it's like the oxygen is just floating around in that blood, but it's not actually being necessarily utilized. As those CO2 levels rise in our body, we're able to pull out more of that oxygen, actually utilize it by the body. So this is where most people um, are having a bit of misunderstanding around that is they're thinking I need to bring more oxygen into my body for whatever you're trying to accomplish with your breath work. But a lot of the times what we actually need to focus on is increasing that threshold of how much CO2 we can have in our body before those sensors go off and we panic and want to take a breath. Because as we push the limit on where that sensor starts to take notice of the CO2, means that we can have higher levels in our body, which means we're going to release more of that oxygen out to the body. And that's where the benefit of a lot of this breath work is coming in. It's not that we're trying to get more of that oxygen in, it's that we need to a certain degree, learn how to bring that threshold up of how much CO2 our body can handle so it can give us more of the oxygen that's already available to us. It has to actually release it. So that's the important piece that I basically wanted to cover. I can go over lots of different breath works with you, and I'll try and get some more videos out there talking about some different techniques that we can use for breath work. And there are some where you are going to try and push lots of oxygen in and have high or low levels of CO2 or oxygen. There's so many variations, but that's not what I wanted to focus on today. Today, I wanted to focus on that relationship between oxygen and CO2 and the importance of using that CO2 to kind of help release the oxygen out to the body to actually get benefit from it in the way that most people are just thinking like big, big belly breaths all the time is better breathing. But a lot of us are actually over breathing, which is bringing that level of CO2 that we can handle down because it's telling us we're always taking these quick little breaths and that's coming down. So what we actually want to do is breathe a little bit slower, small, like lighter breaths. We do want to be deep into that lower abdomen, but deep is confused a lot of the times with bigger. We don't need it to be bigger. We need it to be down further, so not up in your chest, more down in your abdomen. We need it to be a little bit slower because that's going to let the amount of CO2 increase a little bit, that carbon dioxide getting up a little bit, and just a little bit lighter so we're not having such big exchanges of gas and always gulping that oxygen in. We just need to let the CO2 levels come up a little bit, release a bit more of it, and learn how to manage those levels. So that's what I wanted to get across to you guys today is the importance of oxygen to CO2 ratios. Hopefully that was a good breakdown for you and you better understand the importance of breath work and what we really need to be focused on with our breath work. If you got value out of this, I want you to subscribe and like this video so that you get more content that's going to help your health.